Go ahead and download it. It's really a remarkable collection already of information. All right, let's go on and start talking about the report itself. We are building on this word expanding. You were all tasked with expanding pedagogy, or at least describing the pedagogy as it expands. Maybe we could talk a little bit about kind of starting this assessment and collecting with expanding our philosophy, expanding maybe the way we prepare to perceive the structure and how that path will go. Patrick, could you talk to us a little bit about what that process was like and how you feel we've ended up at this point?
Hi there, and hello everyone. The first meeting of the entire task force was a wide-ranging conversation about our purpose and our pathway to a final report. The overwhelming desire was to offer a set of statements and guidelines that would maintain relevance beyond the continual emergence of new scientific findings about the coronavirus and COVID-19. It quickly became clear that we could not offer useful statements and guidelines about pedagogy in the COVID-19 era without first articulating fundamental principles about the importance of choral music, our students, and the nature of the choral experience. But our job was influenced by the timeline that coincided with the beginning of our work. The members of the task force were invited to participate on May 22nd with a charge to examine choral pedagogy during and after the pandemic. George Floyd was killed 3 days later on May 25th. Our philosophy subcommittee wrestled with the confluence of events and ultimately decided that we could not divorce one from the other. We chose to focus our attention toward the students we teach, the lives they live inside and outside our classrooms, and the relevance of our pedagogical and performance traditions to those students during these unsettled and unsettling times. We crafted two sets of statements. In the first, on page 10, we outlined principles that we hope can guide decisions that need to be made as we begin the academic year, regardless of the format of instruction, whether that's face-to-face, online, or hybrid. We then composed a set of corresponding questions on page 11 that can help instructors and conductors interrogate their practices during these times. We did not attempt to provide uniform solutions, but rather, we aimed to clarify the problems facing us so that we could more easily find solutions to fit each of our particular needs in our unique institutional settings. You'll hear more about those potential solutions later in this webinar and when the appendices are released. So as our subcommittee wrestled with our task, we spent considerable time searching for words and phrases that were both precise yet not restrictive. We spent a huge amount of time wordsmithing each clause of each principle and each question. Even where any of you might not agree that we got it right, I hope that you will take our work in the spirit of collegiality and shared purpose. Finally, my thanks to my fellow subcommittee members, Rollo Dilworth, Michael McGee from Macalester College, and John Perkins from Butler University. Thank you for this opportunity to contribute to the work of the NCCO.
Thank you, Patrick. This is fantastic. As I read this report, I thought these principles that you lay forth, I've got it here on page 12. I mean, these are principles I think we can just lift up and keep dear to our work in many ways, the things you lift up. Rollo, I want to throw it back to you. Talk to me, if you could, more about how you started to kind of invite critical thinking and begin to form the themes and framework as you worked with Patrick and on these topics.
Sure, thank you, Miguel, and thank you to Patrick for his leadership and my colleagues who were on this committee. I think we had a great time in the process. It was certainly head-scratching moments where we tried to dig deeper into our own experience and our own areas in order to really determine what were the critical issues and the critical themes that we felt we needed to address. And as Patrick mentioned, we came up with sort of two portions to add to the report, one in the form of principles and one in the form of questions. And we hope that both of these sections will offer our colleagues an opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, sort of this framework to really critically assess their own philosophical views and values and position, and really the principles that guide and shape those views. So in terms of the themes, we were able to look specifically at sort of in 4 areas. One, the singer's experience. And so you'll find in those 2 pages that we look at we ask questions or look at principles related to the social emotional health of our students and the potential trauma that they have experienced and may continue to experience during this very challenging time in our world. Looking at their lives beyond choir and beyond school, looking at issues with regard to access to technology, which of course is a very important issue right now as we try to think about how we deliver instruction. And certainly looking at their musical experiences and trying to make sure that competencies are met and how students are going to be able to move on from this experience that we're in now, the situation that we're in now, and be equipped with the tools that they need to move ahead in their future. So that was one category of themes. Another category of themes had to do with diversity and thinking about various singing traditions, the repertoire that we're choosing that drives our programs and the composers that we choose for our programming. It's certainly diversity among the singers that we recruit to our programs and the audiences that we're trying to serve. The next category of themes were really connected to opportunities afforded by the disruptions of COVID-19. This is really a chance for us, especially through the questions that we asked. We tried to help our colleagues think more critically about their own current pedagogy. You know, is this an opportunity for what we were thinking about in terms of renewal, taking the old and then adding something new to it for a new kind of experience? Or is it more an opportunity for restoration, which sort of implies restoring something back to its original state? So we're really trying to ask the kinds of questions that will hopefully move us toward a direction of maybe more renewal than sort of restoration to sort of the old way or the traditional way that we've thought about our pedagogy, the way we've thought about our repertoire. And certainly this COVID situation that we're in has given us an opportunity to think more about who we include in our programs, who we exclude in our programs, and is there any potential there for us through our pedagogy and through our curriculum to maybe limit opportunities, maybe even to the degree of being oppressive. And then finally, we certainly want to focus, we wanted to focus on our faculty and our colleagues in terms of their own social emotional health and the resources that they may need in order to keep moving forward to make their program successful. I think the final themes we have here have to do with pedagogical flexibility, as I mentioned earlier, and certainly, as Andy talked about a little bit, advocacy and the opportunity that we may have to be greater advocates for our work, given that there are possible limitations to the kinds of reach that we can have in our programs right now in this situation.
This is fascinating. It seems like you all started just scratching a little bit, and it all just came apart. There's so much to talk about, and it's obviously all interconnected, and you can't just start down one path and not at least address the others, at least on the surface. But you didn't go on the surface. I'm fascinated. We've seen so many reports coming out, and each of them valuable. I'm happy to see the NCCO report is immediately, right off the bat, trying to create kind of theoretical frameworks, trying to create a way to look at this and to think about this and to zoom out. I'm hearing social justice often, and we've got some new efforts in that regard, spurred by those principles you've written, Patrick and Rollo. The idea of repertoire as a representative of culture and as a carrier of identity, how programming fits in there. A big one, and we'll talk about this over and over, we're going to have a whole webinar about this, is the voice of the student. Not just, hey, did you like that? But seeking student participation at the foundational level. There's a quote, I won't find it in time, but a quote about maybe it's time we start listening to our students and listen to them from the very beginning, their opinions, and we're thinking a lot more about mental health, about the well-being of our students in everything we do. It's a silver lining to this storm cloud. To this end, there are maybe we should say it out loud. COVID's not everything here. This is part of the second season of webinars in a time of upheaval. We didn't say in the time of COVID. Anyone out there in the panel, how do you see the kind of America's sin, original sin, this concept of race? How do you see that coming into your response beyond just COVID?
I'll just make a first comment here, and that is we were looking at issues of people who might live in different parts of the country, in different socioeconomic, with socioeconomic differences in their backgrounds, who come to us from different musical traditions and are affected by what they know is going on around them every single day. And we have a choice to respond to that or not. And at the same time, that then can affect things like access or to technology. You know, are we going to be a university that does Wi-Fi hotspots in the parking lot on buses? Those sorts of things are important to students, and we need to take those into consideration.
Yeah, I'm looking at page 21, 22, diversifying and enriching choral pedagogy beyond the Eurocentric canon. That's a huge thing. But then the page before, we're at the tail end of a section of just sort of pedagogical resources. And here's one about the COVID digital divide. This idea that access to just hardware or lack thereof is overwhelmingly influencing your access to quality education all of a sudden. Anybody else want to jump in any way, talking about maybe how this is much more than COVID?
I think that from my own experience, that this has really forced me to look closely at my own systems and practices, how we serve our students at Missouri Western. We are an open access institution. And at first glance, it seems like open access would provide multiple opportunities that many students might not have otherwise. But in fact, there are some systematic processes that prevent students from graduating on time, prevent students from experiencing or seeing themselves in our education. I think it's all our intent to provide a diverse and enriched and varied academic experience, but I think so often there are students on the fringe that are left out entirely. And so this has really forced me to take a good look at myself in the mirror and ask some very difficult questions, because I think intention and action are often two separate things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well put. Everyone out there in the audience, if you want to ask any more questions, I'm going to kind of wrap up this section here about expanding our philosophy and how we begin to open our eyes to the full breadth of impact. Did anybody, Coreen, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, thank you so much. One thing that we can think about to try to jumpstart the process is to divorce our exploration of some of these concepts from the actual rehearsal of the repertoire. I think we're kind of I always feel like I'm a slave to that clock and to the time that we have with our specific repertoire at hand. Why not break that bond and say, we're going to talk about repertoire that we're not even working on this semester. Maybe we'll program it next year. Maybe you will have graduated before we have a chance to do it, but now's the time to talk about it. We can listen to it, we can study the score. Let's delve in now. And then that's going to feed us for years to come. And you never know where students might go once they have the tools to learn about music that's outside of the experience they've had so far.
Was it you, Coreen? You talked about how no longer being able to put together a full 60-minute coherent thematic concert, no longer having to or getting to, all of a sudden you could just pick each piece for purely pedagogical reasons. They were standalone instances and became the subject matter of a larger review. Was that you, or I don't remember who, but it seemed like seemed like a great way to think about the freedom. I know sometimes I felt like I wanted to perform a piece, but couldn't quite squeeze it into that holiday concert or something. So I understand. Well, let's move on.